Okay. Here. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Oops. Getting ahead of my own thing here. Let's see. Okay. 1 minute. Just this. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. For those of you who might need it, we have closed captioning available on this program. There are details of how to access that in the chat, but if you do need the closed captioning, you can click at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There should be a CC live transcript feature. And there is where you can set up captioning. You can also go under settings and change the size of your captions too. So if you need that, that will be in the chat, and it's also an option. In the meantime, I'm going to get started with this program as people keep pouring in. Welcome to today's CultureSource program. My name is Adam Desjardins, and I'm the programs manager at CultureSource. For those of you who are new to CultureSource or might not be familiar with CultureSource, we are a regional art service organization serving Southeast Michigan and the 7 counties of Southeast Michigan, so including Detroit, Ann Arbor, Downriver, Oakland County, Macomb County, and basically all throughout the region. We work to serve arts organizations and creative activity. We do this work through 3 main functions. One is online convenings now, but normally in-person events and gatherings to connect and convene folks around ideas in the art sector. We also do this through regranting initiatives, so funding opportunities to support the art sector in the region. And then the last piece we do this through is through research to better understand what are needs and capacities and opportunities for better supporting the art sector in Southeast Michigan. So all kind of feed into each other, but we're really glad that you're here today joining us for our digital access to the arts program, Monetizing Arts Content Online, supporting future of the field. We've got some really exciting speakers here today that we're beaming in from down the road, from in the same nation, and then from internationally too. So a little bit more details about the digital access for the arts program. This is a program that is a huge initiative for us that really questions the meaning of what is arts work online right now for arts and cultural organizations, and how do we kind of question the future of it too for a more sustainable sector of arts programs and performances and exhibitions, and just a truly blended in-person and online art sector. So to detail the 4 pillars of the program, right now is one of our 7-part online programs, which feature local, national, and international presenters. Each program is also followed by a how-to focused hack session, just to promote some, tactical skill building as, we think about how to do arts work online. Another initiative of this, or another wing of this program, is the funding, which is now open. We have a funding program which is basically encouraging CultureSource members to make sustainable investments in technologies that enhance their digital and online work. So that the link to that grant program will be dropped in the chat, and is a really great opportunity. So please check that out for you and your organization. Starting later this month, we'll be having tech experts in residence to provide one-on-one support in digital strategy, ideation, and innovation. So really for your service to meet with the tech expert in residence and better understand how you can strategize your organization's digital work and online work. So a little bit more of a one-on-one skill building and ideating service there. And then coming soon, we have research that we're doing with 8 Bridges Workshop to assess current digital and online capacities of CultureSource members to better understand how we can support arts and cultural organizations in our region in doing work online and continuing to do work online, even once we hopefully and one day will go back into in-person programming and work and all of that as well. So this is the 4 pillars of the program. You can learn more. My colleague Penny Maria is going to drop more information about the program in the chat. This whole program is in partnership with Rocket Community Fund. We are really thankful for their co-thinking on this whole program and the many different layers of it. They've been great partners and are really wonderful to work with. So huge thank you to the community sponsorships team at Rocket Community Fund for their help with the Digital Access for the Arts program. Upcoming programs include, immediately following this, we'll be doing a hack session on lighting and audio with Detroit Public Television. Everything these days online is essentially television. This basically is television. So how can we tap into CultureSource member Detroit Public Television, who is a great, supporter of the arts and produces a lot of arts programming, to really share their expertise on doing online programs and what it takes to, to get your lighting and audio right, whether it's just for a Zoom call, whether it's for a performance. So really excited to be doing that with them. And this will be the first part. We'll be doing a second part later in March too. Next week, we'll be doing office hours with CultureSource staff. So if you have any questions about PPP loans, federal support, or just any other questions for CultureSource staff about resources available, drop in. This is, going to be a drop-in kind of focused, very informal office hours, and we'll be doing this monthly too. Later this month, we'll have the next Digital Access for the Arts program, which is called Digital Archiving, Preserving Work, Saving Coin. It sounds nerdy, but it's going to be really interesting. I've had a chance to connect with Michigan Digital Preservation Network about this, and they are just like really forward thinking in the way that we can be thinking about archiving this type of work that we're doing programmatically online, and what it means to really be thinking about the future of preserving and archiving work, which is so important to the art sector, whether it's performances, whether it's collections, whether you're working at like a small historical museum. How can we be thinking about the online future of preserving arts work? And then save the date for our spring biennial member meeting on Wednesday, March 24th from 1 to 3 p.m. We'll be announcing some really exciting speakers and the format for that pretty soon. Of note, we are hiring a communications director. So if you're interested in the position or know somebody who's a great fit, please encourage them to apply. We'll be dropping the position profile in the chat too. And then also just wanted to note this funding opportunity from the Henry Ford Health System. There will be 8 awards of $10,000 for artist proposals for custom artwork to be installed at 8 different Henry Ford Hospital sites this spring. Nonprofits are also eligible to apply, so do check that out. It's a really great opportunity for artists that maybe you work with, or if your organization does a lot of art making as well, consider applying. It's just a great opportunity, and great to see the health systems embracing arts programming. Our graphic recorder for today is Yana Zaro, who's beamed in from Ypsilanti, Michigan, and we'll be recording this event and the ideas presented in it. So really thankful for Yen. We'll be sharing more about her work too in the chat. Everything's in the chat. And a huge thank you to all of our partners who help us do our work and co-think in our programs and our funding initiatives and our research. And we're just really grateful for a really great partnership in supporting us to help support the sector at large here. So without further ado, today's program is all about monetization of arts content online, which is a huge topic. We'll be really, approaching this conversation from an exploratory angle. It's a big question right now. How do we monetize and support the future of arts and culture in the online space, where online is so often synonymous with free? So I'm really excited to kind of hear from these 3 different presenters we have talking about their 3 different angles to the topic of monetizing arts content online and how they've, been able to do that in their own organization or research. And just excited to share the space with Amanda down the street, Doug, who is beaming in from Indianapolis, and then Emma, who's come in all the way from London. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Amanda Rogers from Pewabic, who's going to present, and then Doug will go, and then Emma, and then we'll have a conversation at the end. So keep your questions as well, and please use the Q&A chat or the Q&A function to ask questions. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Amanda Rogers, who will present and introduce herself. Amanda, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks, Adam. I'm so excited to be here, kind of sharing what we've learned over the last 5 years. Looks like I don't have the ability to share my screen. Oh, there it is. Okay. was missing for a moment. Alrighty, so I'm not sure how many of you on this call today know of Pewabic, so I'll give the nickel speech really quick, but we have been handcrafting pottery and architectural tile in the city of Detroit since 1903. This year is actually the 40th anniversary of our nonprofit status, just maintaining this method of maintaining the National Historic Landmark pottery, and being able to share the joy of ceramic work with people around the world. So I'm going on to our next slide. Just to give you a start, I joined the team in late 2015, and all I saw were opportunities that were untapped in the digital sphere. We had a really bizarre website set up with actually 2 separate websites. One that was for the store, the sales component online that was connected to our Counterpoint software at the time, and neither site was well connected. They weren't user friendly, and they required coding actually to edit. So we were not able to really take any major steps in improving our online presence through those tools. And so in 2016, we began the process of actually switching from Counterpoint to NetSuite, which is basically an accounting CRM software that we're using sort of organization-wide. And with that change, the website that we had previously for our online sales was not going to function. So we quickly had to build a custom coded site that would just function, just be able to make a sale. That was the baseline for how that was created. And so in my position of leadership for this marketing team, I really knew that this was not the final solution. It was just kind of a band-aid to get us to a much better solution. And so we had to switch from being reactive on our web presence and coming at it from a place of a new vision and really a plan for where we wanted to go moving forward. And so that was really motivated by user experience. We wanted this digital storefront to kind of be an extension of the experience when you come on site to the pottery, a sort of a digital space that inspires our customers, helps them to fall in love with not only the work that we make, but the people who make it, and really fuel a passion for our mission and the work that we're making. And something that was really sort of central to that was leading with photography. We are a visual arts organization. We're making ceramic work. And so we really wanted the work and the visuals of our space and our makers to really speak for itself. And there's a lot of motivations, things that had lacked in previous websites that really guided our decision-making throughout this process. So we wanted it not only to be easier to use for customers, but as well for our internal team to be able to make edits without contacting a coder. We wanted to be able to reduce customer confusion that was the result of having 2 separate sites that were run on completely different platforms. And we really needed to be able to update it in-house, not only to save that money on outside consultants, but also just to make us more nimble and be able to make updates and changes and add products as we saw fit. And so, we wanted things to be easy to purchase. We wanted that kind of to take the lead and the role of the website, and also have the site better represent who we are as an organization today. We've got 118-year history this year, and there's a lot of stories to tell, but we really want people to know who we are today because of who we were when we first started. And so some of the ways that we can do that is through better integration of other digital channels and tools that we utilize, constant contact, social media channels, all these different areas where we had pockets of community centered around a love for Pewabic. We also did not have really analytic tools other than Google Analytics, which isn't always great at diving into the details of specific item sales and customer conversions. And then until we did all of this, there was no real chance to reach new audiences, expand our reach across the country, and better serve our existing customers online. And so after about a year process of checking out different platforms, trial and error, we figured out that Shopify was our path moving forward for several reasons listed here. It made sense economically. We saw a lot of the pain points from switching different sites sort of leaving with this platform. And there's just such a beautiful ability to customize, both through coding on the back end if you needed it, but also pre-built apps within the Shopify App Store because Shopify focuses, and platforms like Shopify, they focus on user experience and functionality across their users, and simple things like security certifications for your website. It allowed us to focus exclusively on storytelling and the products that we are sharing with the world online. And so the resulting site, which I don't have a lot on here for you today, you can all check out pewabic.org and sort of explore it yourself. But two really big leaps that came right away was on the right, just mobile functionality. You know, that's so essential to SEO and your rankings on Google these days, that is just needs to be the basis of your site from go. So that was a huge component. And then we also had the ability to share exhibition work and independent artist work online, which you can see in the collection on the left. This is something we took huge advantage of within this last year with COVID, especially during our holiday showcase exhibition. And it's allowed us to connect these artists from Michigan and across the country with customers across the country, which has been very exciting. And once we launched the site, that was not the end. You know, still today, I have a whole laundry list of things that we desire to do to improve the site, improve our storytelling, improve our customer experience. But just a couple of the key things that apps allowed us to plug in. You know, with the initial setup, maintaining the ability for members to receive their discount online was a really big point for us. Since then, we've instituted smaller apps like back in stock notifications. You know, this allows us to capture sales from customers who wanted something like this hex paperweight tile. It was sold out when they came to the site, sign up for an email notification, and they get notified when we add stock back to the website. And so that's helped us capture a lot of revenue that could have been lost. And then we've also been able to better connect the storytelling from our social channels and emails and directly connect people to the stories about these products and the product listings online, which has helped with conversions significantly. And then the last one, online auction, is a perfect segue to sort of the COVID impact on it all. We really can't envision how the organization would have survived this past year if it hadn't been for the investments that we made in our web platform. And so, you know, we would not have been able to process over 300 online orders during that 2-month closure when we couldn't take orders in any other way. We've implemented new systems like curbside pickup that we envision will stick around long after COVID. And just all of these special collection releases. We managed the amount of customers, which is normally more predominantly weighted in store during the holiday season, which is our busiest revenue generating season of the year. We were able to pivot and handle majority of those customers online this year because of the tools that this like wonderfully foundational website allowed us to pivot and work with. And then we've also moved, you know, annual events online. I don't envision that these will fully replace those events, but I think post-COVID will incorporate online elements to these annual events to better connect with members across the country and fans that we built from around the world. And all of this is just rooted in big picture. So from the digital sphere, from when I started at the Pottery 5 years ago, we really could not invest in advertising, press, social in a really big financial way because we didn't have that foundation of a website to guide people to. And now that we've built that website and we've had it with us now for 2 years, we're starting to play with those components more. You really need to make sure that the foundation, not only when people visit on site, but when they first interact with your organization online, is going to reflect the anticipation and the expectation they're going to have when they interact with one of your pieces or come and visit you for the first time in person. So we've really tried to align all of those things. And I look forward to seeing where the next 2 years takes this site as we continue to build on what foundation we've laid these last 2 years. So with that, that's kind of the end of what I have today. I encourage you all to follow us on social media, check out the website, and reach out via email if you guys have any questions for me. I know I covered a lot.
Thanks, Amanda. No, it was really great. I also love that last slide too, the just map of how you're thinking of it all and where it all goes as well. So We'll hold off on questions for Amanda until the end, but if you do have questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A. And now we're going to kind of move on to the next presentation from Doug Noonan, who is a professor down at Indiana University and a new partner with us at the AEI lab there, the Arts Entrepreneurship and Innovation Lab. We're really excited to have Doug here to present, and also just excited to start this partnership with the research that they're doing down at Indiana University. Doug, thanks for being here.
Yeah, hey, thank you. And I just lost internet on my laptop. Can I jump to third in the queue while I do some troubleshooting here?
You bet, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. We're making it work. Anyway, we'll move on to Emma. Emma Keith, all the way from London, who is the head of broadcast at the National Theatre. And we're really excited to have Emma here today. Thanks for coming to Southeast Michigan via the World Wide Web, Emma. And yeah, looking forward to what you have to share.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully one day I can make it there in real life when the world opens up again. Yes. And not just in a virtual way. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the work that the National Theatre has done, both kind of pre-COVID, but also particularly in the last year, the way that we have evolved and developed our business during this time to take our work online and to reach audiences. So the NT comes from a slightly different perspective. We're quite a large organisation. We're a big theatre based in London, and we put on about 25 productions a year. We're a repertory theatre and producing theatre, so we produce all of our work in-house and put on, like I say, about 25 productions a year. Back in 2009, we launched National Theatre Live, which took productions from the stages of the National Theatre and broadcast them to movie theatres across the globe. It really was a bit of a cheat. We kind of did what the Met Opera had started with their Live in HD programme. And we have to date recorded about 85 productions. It really aims to be the best of British theatre. So it's theatre both from the National, but also from other theatre companies across London, across the UK, in the West End. And we take those out to cinemas, to movie theatres, like I say, across the world. We've only put them into cinemas. That had been kind of our business model and what we had been doing with National Theatre Live. And across a 10-year period, we'd reached a global audience of 10 million people. Then last year, COVID hit, and for us, it really hit hard in London. In March and the middle of March, theatres were ordered to close by the government, and all of our performances stopped. We really did find ourselves in that position of saying, okay, what do we do now? And we were closed in the middle of March, and at the start of April, we launched what I've titled here as National Theatre at Home 1.0, because there's a 2.0 just to avoid confusion. So National Theatre at Home launched in April 2020. What we did was we took that back catalogue of recordings that we had from National Theatre Live, and we made them available on the National Theatre's YouTube channel, completely freely available. And I think that's certainly something when people start to think about taking work online, particularly performing arts, is there an expectation from audiences for it to be freely available online? For us, we are a publicly funded organisation, a not-for-profit. We receive money directly from the UK government to produce theatre and to take it out across the country and across the world. So it being freely available really talks to our mission as an organisation. But what we did was we solicited donations through the YouTube platform, and we were really impressed and pleased with how well that performed during National Theatre at Home. And so we did a huge amount of fundraising off of that, and we also carried advertising. So normally our YouTube channel is completely advertising free, but during this period, we did turn on the advertising feature. It's significant to note that it took us 10 years to reach 10 million audience on NT Live, which is in cinemas, but through the YouTube channel and NT at Home, we reached 15 million views globally across the 16-week period. We did a weekly release of titles every Thursday evening. We put a new title out. It was up for a week, so people had a week to watch it, and then after that it came down. Again, that was in part because of our rights agreement. So we had the rights to put it in cinema, and then we had to renegotiate the rights to be able to put it onto our YouTube channel. So it was just for that limited period of time. But what launching NT at Home did, it kind of escalated things for us. I say it kind of moved us forward about 3 to 5 years. Things that we'd been starting to think about and talk about, all of a sudden were going to become a reality. We were going to do them and give them a try. What we really did with NT at Home as well was we only launched 4 titles to start with. Believe it or not, in those days, we thought this pandemic might be over within a month and things back to normal, which seems rather naive. Now we're almost a year on. But we launched with 4 titles, and we kept adding 4 titles or 5 titles as we went along. So it really kind of grew and developed incrementally. And we just gave ourselves the time to learn and to test what was working for us. So we put out a really wide range of content, from kind of more family-friendly productions to really cutting-edge new work. And we just looked and learned during that time period. What were people interested in? What were the audience views? What was generating the most buzz on social media? And we really quickly found that there was an audience who wanted to be able to access our content online, and particularly during this COVID period, it felt like something that we wanted to be able to capitalize on. But what we also realized quite quickly was that continuing to give the content away for free was not sustainable for us. Although the fundraising was great, it wasn't kind of plugging that hole. So we moved on to National Theatre at Home 2.0. So this launched in December last year, and it offers 2 products on it. So it offers a subscription monthly and annual subscriptions that people can sign up for. And also they can do a rental, a TVOD product. So you can buy a particular title and you have a window in which to watch it. So we've kind of created a theatre version of Netflix or Disney Plus, that kind of thing. And it carries content from the National Theatre, from the NT Live archive of content, and also recordings that the National Theatre has done that have literally just sat in our archive and never been seen by people. So we're providing an exclusive opportunity for people to see things. That is powered in the back end by the Vimeo OTT platform, which is over the top. So it's basically not linear television, not cable television, it sits alongside that. And we've seen really great success with that. We launched in December last year, like I said, and we had some ambitions and targets for year 1, which unbelievably we managed to reach within 6 weeks. So we are now in the process of very much adjusting those forecasts and those targets for year 1 and looking at what may be possible and what additional investment and resources are needed to be able to keep growing National Theatre at Home. I think we were very fortunate that we were able to release it just before Christmas, and we saw huge amounts of gift subscriptions as well. So people were able to purchase it as a gift for the holidays and give it to their friends. And we've also now just started digital membership, so people can become a member of the National Theatre and make a philanthropic donation alongside receiving access to the National Theatre at Home catalogue. There's about 15 titles on the platform now, and we add 2 to 3 titles each month, again, just to give people an opportunity to see something new, hopefully keep those people that have signed up on the platform, and also bring new audiences in. And what we've really done with this isn't the best chart, I'm afraid. I threw it together quite quickly, but for us, what we're always trying to do is sort of find this sweet spot in the middle where that star is between these 3 areas. So access and reach is really important for us. We want to be reaching the most people possible. And that's where NT at Home 1.0 free on YouTube was really fantastic, because the reach and the access with YouTube's ubiquity was absolutely amazing. Where it was slightly off kilter was around kind of revenue and income. Although the fundraising was great, there wasn't a kind of direct revenue stream coming in. And we always think in terms of revenue for us as both kind of multifaceted. So income directly, so the subscription income from NT at Home, it's also sponsored, and people also have the opportunity to make philanthropic donations beyond that. So we're always looking at the whole network of things. And then the third part for us particularly is around our rights agreement. So what the approach that we have taken is that we just secure permissions for what we know we're specifically going to do. So unlike when something is produced, a film is produced or something is produced for television, where they buy all of the rights up front, we've flipped that business model. So we just buy the rights that we need. And what that does is keep the costs relatively low for us. So we don't have to pay huge upfront fees. So the capitalization costs of getting something like NT at Home off the ground are much reduced. However, the biggest part of making NT at Home happen was the rights clearance, both in terms of the time and the resource of staffing to make that happen, and also the cost within the programme. And so that's really where we're always thinking, is how we can get the balance between all of those aspects and bring that together so that we can provide the biggest reach to our audiences across the UK, across the world. And that's really what we're looking for, an opportunity to be able to do and see as a way to continue to monetize our content as things go more and more digital.
Thanks, Emma. So many questions. I'm like, I just want to keep digging deeper. But again, we'll hold off. Well, we're going to move on to Doug now for possibly ad lib, possibly presentation. You know, he's going to keep us on our toes, and we'll see what Doug is up to down at Indiana University on the kind of crowdfunding research front, and what's how you're kind of approaching this topic and conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Adam, and thanks Emma for letting me mess up the queue and jumping in to save me for a bit while I had some tech problems. So, all right, I'm a professor, did some research at the IU Center for Cultural Affairs inside the Arts, Entrepreneurship, and Innovation Lab here. And a lot of my work has been looking at crowdfunding in the cultural sector. And so I want to think about some of these questions about using these platforms for fundraising. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I'll give you a couple big picture thoughts and then some of my other thoughts as we go. So crowdfunding in the cultural sector, basic idea here is letting crowds directly fund projects. It's often done via a donation model or a pre-sale model. And one of the core elements here is that it cuts out the middleman, where the creator gets to use the platform to more directly work with their backers and their finance. It's seen really rapid growth in the area, especially in smaller markets, where smaller markets are both geographically smaller markets, but also in for more niche products and niche ideas have really taken off in the crowdfunding space. The basics of it is actually, there's nothing really new about this. It's an old model where a community or a crowd jointly contributes to funding a project. In its modern incarnation, what makes it special and different is this use of an online platform to really reduce those transaction costs of finding your crowd and tapping into them. Platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo are pretty well known and in many ways household terms. Kickstarter alone raised over $5 billion had been the platform for raising over $5 billion for over 200,000 projects. It was several years ago they announced that Kickstarter is a platform that's funding the arts at a greater extent than the National Endowment for the Arts does in a given year, and it's a big player now. And another interesting part of all this is the role of backer input in terms of more than just dollars. A big part of the crowdfunding experience is receiving input from backers, essentially as co-designers in many cases, or learning from them about how to adjust and tailor a project. There's a lot of promise that's seen behind the notion of crowdfunding. One is that it removes the old gatekeepers and bypasses them. It's got direct appeal to the audience. It taps into the wisdom of the crowd. By now, we've got over a quarter of Americans have backed something and participated in a crowdfunding platform of some type. So it's gaining a lot of traction. And some of my work has been looked at this tapping into the wisdom of the crowd bit and seeing that the creators that are able to do that tend to have more success in terms of raising money. They meet their goals more likely and they exceed them in many cases. But they're also associated often with lower quality end products, that people don't rate these things as well, perhaps because the crowd has maybe not the best ideas, but at least they get to make the sale. And so there's some interesting trade-offs that creators have to face when working in this arena. Another big promise of crowdfunding is that it flattens the world. It lets us go digital and bypass being in a particular place. So producers can be anywhere, just as backers and the consumers can be anywhere. And so what we see is crowdfunding is happening everywhere where there's people, but it also enables people to move away from their markets and move into new ones physically. And so we see that a lot of footloose creators are able to walk away from their old town and move into a new one. And places like Detroit and some Midwestern cities like Indianapolis or Milwaukee are actually gaining in terms of these creators moving in more than they're actually walking away. There's some interesting forces at play here as I see it. A key piece of all the crowdfunding is about access to and bringing together larger crowds. It's easier to throw a net far and wide and catch more eyeballs and potentially more pocketbooks this way. But it also really helps people go narrower and deeper and find their niche products and those niche tastes and serve that market. And so one of the things we see in crowdfunding is it's particularly empowering for niche products and niche projects. Second, there's actually some really important uses of crowdfunding that aren't necessarily the obvious ones or the intended ones. Crowdfunding works in the creative sector most powerfully as a crowd building vehicle. It's a way to build your networks and build your audience or your fan base and develop those kinds of relationships. It's also been used for more of a crowdsourcing bit, again, where it's less about the dollars from the crowd and more about the information gathered from the crowd, learning what they like and what they don't like and what's viable and what's not. Some of the examples on the right side of the screen there are some really commercially available products that are marketed and sold through normal traditional retail sorts of venues, but they all started as Kickstarter projects where the use of this for market R&D, using this platform really helped make the case that these are viable products. It's much better than running focus groups in malls. And in general, these platforms get really used often for building on existing crowds, your organization, or you might already have a mailing list. And this helps it tap into and use another platform for working with them. Let's see. Oops. Initially, if we think about what happened last year, there was a huge drop off in the first half of last year in using crowdfunding across the board, but it was particularly hard hit in the arts sectors for crowdfunding. Things that were audience-based or consumer-based got hit the hardest, and things like technology sorts of projects kept on chugging along. But you can see that in the graph there, there's big drop-offs for arts, for film, for music, for food-related projects. But by the second half of last year, things rebounded, and now they're tracking roughly along with where they were in past years. Another thing I mentioned is before the pandemic hit, the arts sector in the crowdfunding space was rather egalitarian in the sense that there were a lot of small sort of freelance projects that we would find in the crowdfunding world. Much more so small projects that were viable in the arts world than we'd see in the tech or games or other sorts of parts of the crowdfunding landscape. During the pandemic, however, there was a big shift to fewer campaigns in the arts world and bigger campaigns. So it started to see some consolidation there. We'll see if that returns and back to the old ways later this year. Some of my last thoughts on this, there's certainly growing popularity in crowdfunding in the cultural sector among the creators and the backers. It's really easy to start up and start running a project. It's a lot harder to actually start up and do it well. So the entry be pretty low, but there's a lot of homework that needs to get done to help improve your odds of success. Success rates vary considerably, usually ranging around 30%, and a lot of it depends on the type of project. Dance projects fare a lot better than hip hop music projects on average. It's a very strange landscape in the crowdfunding world. If you start browsing around Kickstarter or other sites, you might find that there's a lot of people living in basements seeming to knit sweaters for cats. And that's what crowdfunding is about, where these things are not very successful, but there's a lot of variation. In some corners, it's really hyper competitive and hard to grab the attention of the market because there's a lot of other people vying for those same eyeballs. And in other places, it's largely just a fundraising platform for an existing arts organization or an event. To give you a sense of this, it's a little graphic. So this is looking at all the Kickstarter projects ever. And each of these, we've broken them down by different categories, whether it's music or film or publishing. The size of the bubbles is proportionate to how many projects are in each of these different kinds of categories. The two biggest bubbles there are film and video and music. They account for half of all Kickstarter projects fall into these two categories. And then there's smaller ones like journalism on the left or dance on the right. Going left to right, that horizontal axis measures the average success rates in each of these different categories. So you can see dance projects tend to be very successful on average, whereas journalism or craft projects tend to be much less successful in crowdfunding, or have a harder time meeting their goals. And then the vertical axis is a measure of the average size of these projects. So you can see the tech, design, and game world is twice or 3 times bigger on average than these other projects in these other categories, which are often on the $3,000 to $4,000 scale. We could zoom in on any one of these bubbles and get a sense of the variation within one. So if we looked at just within the arts category, there's a lot of different types, from ceramics down to conceptual art and so on. And we can see that there's some variation between 25% success rates up to 50, 60% success rates there. But if we look in the music category, we see even bigger interesting patterns here, where hip hop projects are all the way out at the left, and these things do very poorly on average, whereas classical music or indie rock projects are way out at the right, where you've got a passionate and perhaps well-funded fan base there that's able to support and access these platforms and support these kinds of projects, where apparently it's a lot harder for certain other types, whether it's electronic or R&B, other types of music projects. And you can see the scale here again is often around the $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 range. Last thing I'll mention is a big part of crowdfunding in the cultural sector is what happens after the campaign is over, whether it's simple issues of delivering on promises, but there's two other big elements here, and it's about building the networks and building relationships and the reputation you get for the projects or from the projects. And a lot of that work is what happens after the campaign, where in some ways you don't sell the product as much as you're monetizing and capitalizing on the reputation you gain from the project, from the campaign, and from its success. And then lastly, these things rarely happen in vacuums. These are usually complementing some other activity from the creator or the arts organization. They're doing some other marketing of something else, and this is a piece that fits into a larger strategy. And with that, I'm sure I'm over on time, so I'm going to hand the mic back over, and I look forward to any questions.
Thanks, Doug. That was really great. I also, what is chiptune? I saw that it was in, like it was an outlier in the music one. I was like, what is that? A very quick question there.
Yeah, it's the type of music that is based on sort of computer noises, basically, and very electronic stuff you might find for using on video games or your phones or something.
Interesting. Love it. Thanks so much, Doug. I'm now going to invite all the panelists to turn their videos back on, and we're going to do, a grid conversation piece. Also, Yen Azaro will be joining us and sharing her screen to kind of graphic record the conversation too. Once Yen shares her screen, you'll be able to use the this little gray bar to the right hand side of your screen, and you can adjust it so you can either see more of me and these beautiful panelists, you can see more of Yen's visual graphic recording. It's choose your own bliss here. So just wanted to provide some interesting visuals, and thanks to Yen for being here and doing this with us too, to switch up how we view programs too. So I think these were all such great presentations. Thank you all for being here, and there's so many ideas I have running around my head, and just trying to tie some themes together here too. And so one that I really see across the board is the communicating value, and how have you communicated value, which I think everybody here has sort of spoken to, but also how do you do that internally? And maybe this is more a question for Emma and Amanda, in how have you communicated the value of, hey, we're going to take some risks with our online sales, or hey, we're going to, Emma, you had detailed, we have this 3 to 5 year strategy plan, and I'm, trying to make people, recognize the importance of it, but then pandemic hits and suddenly it's oh no, it's time to, unveil this plan. So just thinking, more internally at your organizations, Amanda and Emma, what has been your journey in kind of communicating the value of these, experiments and platforms and risk taking with trying to, produce content, but also monetize off of it as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think for Pewabic, good to identify like the key decision makers at the organization. And I knew that the executive director was on board with sort of the vision that I was presenting. And it was really like, from an accounting standpoint, I needed to sort of pull in support from that department. And so I really sort of looked at the expenditures that we had invested already, and that I envisioned we would continue to invest had we stayed with this like custom coded, really niche website that I couldn't edit on my own. And using some of those numbers to say, hey, this is how much money we're likely going to have to spend, if not more, every year to keep this website up to date. And it's not doing anything that we need it to do. So there's just, so many trends right now, and has been for several years now, of focusing on web and just continuing to like drop those conversations and thoughts into different meetings and like point out opportunities. Simply like this past year, we sent ceramic art to all 50 states. We couldn't do that with our previous website. And so, just thinking about what the advantages are going to be and laying those out with some connections to like how that might impact the finances is something that I found really successful in bringing people on board.
I think for us, don't tell anybody else that I said this, but the best thing that happened for my area of the organisation was we were closed. So we're a theatre. What we do every night is get the show on, and that's what drives the organisation. That's where the focus is we've got to put a show on, we've got to make new work, and we've got to perform to audiences. And all of a sudden, that whole part of the organisation just stopped overnight, and that wasn't happening. So all of a sudden, the focus and the intention moved to the digital sphere. How do we continue to do what we do in terms of engaging audiences? How do we continue to make new work and bring people to the work that we've done during this time? And I think that being said, there really was sort of an organisational understanding and appreciation of the work that we'd done, and NT Live had been around for 10 years, so we were very much a part of the organisation. But I think what this has really shown is how there's a real opportunity for digital to become more central to the organisation, especially as we move and start to think what the world looks like post-COVID, or whatever it is when we get back to a period where the theatre is open again. I don't think we'll ever go back to what it was like before. So digital will still be embedded and at the heart of the organisation in a way that it wasn't before we closed down. And like Adam said, we had a kind of 3 to 5 year plan of things that we thought we were going to do, and having our content available on subscription was one of the like long-term aims in that 5-year plan, and that's now a reality. So we've got to be thinking about the future again. What's next? What does the next 5 years look like? Because things have escalated so much, but I think that's a really great opportunity for us that we find ourselves at that point now.
Adam, let me add one from my perspective. There's, in some ways, a lot of the crowdfunding world is a bunch of freelance independent people going in, but many of them are connected to day jobs and regular employment situations, and they use the crowdfunding platform partly as a side hustle or as a gig. But it's a proof of concept that they often then take back to their employer and say, look, I actually can communicate value here. I just in 30 days raised $5,000 on this one thing. Maybe we should actually consider doing this per.
Oh, I think we lost Doug. Maybe he'll come back. I was really looking forward to what he was going to say. We will carry on while Doug is frozen. We'll hope that
creators who are connecting.
Oh, there we go.
The creators who are
back.
Sorry, did I skip out? Oh,
yes, you did. No. Try.
Okay.
Well, try again.
Another piece is that the creators who are really successful are those who are developing their relationship with their backers, and a lot of this is sort of online chat and digital communication because they're not doing it in person, and that's now the way of life for so many of us. But that is something that really shows up, is having more direct conversation with your audience, with your customers, is something that this platform has really enhanced. And those that do it are the ones who are finding themselves more successful. How they're doing it, I don't know personally more than just but they're doing more of it.
Yeah, that's such a great follow-up to this, or like a great point to this next question about, understanding audience too, because I think both Amanda and Emma, you're speaking to like, yeah, we just, have built out this extensive online work that we're doing and reaching, selling to all 50 states. And Emma, like, you got me in Detroit watching a YouTube stream of a national theater production, So how have you, really thought about your audience or learned about your audience or evaluated your audience too? And I also, made note of Doug's, what he said, that it's like crowd sourcing too, right? Was that the term? I wrote it down here somewhere, but I lost my note. Or crowd building. How have you built your crowd? And so I'm wondering, in terms of understanding your crowd or your audience, what has been maybe a learning, what's been helpful, and like ways that you've like been able to evaluate, and just wanted to get a little bit more inside the process and minds of how we've got this audience. What do we know about them? Who are they? What are they doing?
I can take this one again. Yeah, before the shift to Shopify, we were utilizing what we could from Google Analytics. We were looking at, how people were reacting to photos and videos on our social channels, just to see what those audiences were. Even like within email, just seeing where the click-throughs are happening, what content, we experimented. Since we didn't have events coming up, we changed our normal like event calendar at the end of our emails to, hey, have you seen, or did you miss the most recent blog posts? And we didn't expect that to be as popular as it was. And so it was interesting to see, there was definitely a desire for like the historic storytelling through the emails. There was a desire for architectural tile content online. And now that we've had 2 years of content and information gathering on Shopify, and some of the apps that we've plugged in, we made realizations and changes to what we were making and how many we were making of certain items based on like the back in stock notifications. I think we pay like $20 a month for that app, and it's informed us that like products we never envisioned that a lot of people would want, all of a sudden we had 60 people sign up for a frame tile that we hadn't featured in marketing at all in the last 5 years. And so we're doing a lot more like just review of all the different platforms and how the audiences in each of those spheres are reacting to certain information, both through conversions and just click-throughs to see and read more information. And actually then applying that to the products we're featuring for upcoming collections, as well as, how much we're ordering of specific items. And that's been, I think, hugely helpful in ensuring that with the lack of time in production this year with the shutdown, we lost a lot of production time at the Pottery. We made sure that the time we were spending creating work was going to have an audience that wanted to take those items home with them.
Yeah, I can go next if that's helpful. I suppose the thing from our perspective is we reached a global audience far in excess of what we had been doing previously. So NT Live would go to about 65 countries. NT at Home is going to about 170 countries. So we're reaching a much broader audience than we were doing previously. And I think that's one of the benefits of digital, is it really does break down that geographic barrier for people. And they don't have to kind of get there in the same way. We're probably struggling slightly under a deluge of data as well at the moment. So with NT Live putting it into cinemas, all of the information about who the customers and who the audience are is with the cinemas. We don't, or with the movie theatres, we don't get any of that. So we know how many tickets we sold and what people have paid, but we don't know any more information about them. So we did survey work and had our own email database that we tried to grow. But through NT at Home, we've got so much rich data now about the audience, about who they are, where they live, what they're watching, how they're engaging with us on that platform. And so we're at that point where we're having to say, right, we need more tools. We need more ways in which we can kind of analyze this customer data and audience data and use it effectively, help it to inform our programming and our decision making about what we're going to release on the platform, help it to see where there's areas where potentially we could really grow the audience. And that's a position that we're not normally in, because we don't usually have that data and that information. So from that perspective, it's really interesting for us to be capturing the amount of information that we are.
I'm wondering, Doug, from a research angle and perspective, and thinking through that as well, like understanding audience, what that might make you think about, from the crowdfunding perspective too, of, how you might have seen crowdfunders and their platforms, really maximize off of audience. I know that you were talking about, reputation as being a piece of it too, but, what Amanda and Emma's kind of responses make you think on that front?
I think it's really important, obviously, and the crowdfunders who are able to cultivate, access, and then grow and develop a relationship and cultivate that audience or the backers, those are the ones who succeed. It's also interesting in that in some areas the crowd can be pretty unforgiving, and that's where the reputation piece works. And works in both directions. The crowd, if you come up with a bad idea and you put it out there and it fails, those creators tend to fail on their next attempt as well. And so success has been, one thing the research shows is the success begets more success, but failure is hard to recover from in some areas. So and that's something that anyone entering into the crowdfunding world, depending on the kind of market you're in, should be really mindful of. If your first launch, it says a lot about what your next launch is going to do. And that's not unlike a lot of other parts of modern life, but it can be really, really strong in this digital world where they can be pretty unforgiving if you're not careful.
And that makes me think of the this next question too, is, in both thinking about the successes and failures, and also, all of your journeys in this work, Doug in your research, Amanda and Emma, and, unveiling and, rolling out the red carpet of these platforms and digital tools that you've been using. What if, we were to go down the road of unsolicited advice, or what you would tell your past self, in approaching this work, what might it be, for somebody who, like me, who might, not necessarily be thinking about this, an online sales gift shop or, production, like platform, how might I start, what are the tips from you all on how to start and really, think through, okay, this is what I did, this is what worked, this is what maybe didn't work. Like, what would you tell your past self, I think is the bigger question here.
Keep this trend going, I guess.
I know, I should just call on direct people.
I know, like giving everyone a second. Yeah, I think there's so much learned. I feel like I've listened to so many different webinars, and I've gone to, digital summits, and there's just so much information out there about like what you can be doing, what you should be doing. And I think, you kind of have to learn to absorb that, but you sort of quiet it down as you sit down and look at like your organization and your mission and what you're trying to achieve and who you're trying to reach. So for example, like for Pewabic, we make ceramic objects. It's all about the hand. I'm not necessarily doing the latest trends in terms of like digital advertising, paid advertising online. I'm trying to find more authentic connections with people based on our stories and what we make and how we do it, because those are more valuable than investing in getting clicks for people that really aren't interested in what we're doing. And so really trying to let the mission of the organization and your overall sort of goals and direction also impact the decisions that you're making online. And I just cannot get over how important doing our website right was, like having that space to direct people to. Like that was the best investment I think that we've made as an organization in the past decade.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Amanda. I think getting the platform right and the website right is really important. I think that was, for us, one of the things that in talking about launching a platform and streaming, it's very much like, do we take something off the shelf? Do we build it ourselves? And actually, in a way, what COVID did, and being in the kind of pandemic situation, was it put some constraints around us, which made the decision-making process easier, because we didn't have time to all sit down and have 3-hour conversations about who we might work with or what it might look like. We had to move so much more quickly than we would do normally. And so that constraint of time, in a way, was really helpful. I mean, at times it was unhelpful because there was too much to do and not enough time to do it in. But in a way, it made some of the decision-making process for us much easier and much quicker, because we couldn't have big conversations about it. We just had to kind of keep moving and keep pushing forwards. And ultimately, I think there's things that we absolutely would have done different if we went back, but it was really helpful to kind of embrace that as part of the boundaries in which we had to work, both time and money. We kind of we had to invest the least amount of money to make this happen, because we didn't know whether it was going to work. So it was working really leanly, but giving ourselves enough options and flexibility that if it was more successful than we thought it was going to be, we kind of had the right foundations there and had the right groundwork there to really capitalize on those opportunities. And that's why working with Vimeo made sense. Let's not build something ourselves. That's not what we do. Let's work with someone who does that, and let's buy something really cheap off the shelf, make it look national theatre, and just put it out there and see what happens. And if no one goes for it, we've got to accept that's okay and we can walk away from it. But if people do, then we've got to get in and put our weight behind it. But yeah, in a weird way, kind of time was a really helpful constraint that things just had to kind of push forwards.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what you were saying about kind of like preparing for it to go better than you expect, that was kind of the entire exercise of 2020 for us. I think we had, I forget what the first thing was. I think it was maybe just the fact that we had 300 orders come in those first 2 months, and we came back from that and then had to figure out how to ship 300 orders. We had never done that in the history of the organization. And so like from that point forward, we were sort of designing for expectation in terms of events and new things that we were trying, but we were also, like you said, like preparing for if it went like mind-blowingly well, so that we had the personnel and resources to actually execute the portions of those digital experiences that required, an in-person touch. So.
Doug, I'm wondering from your perspective, what Amanda and Emma makes you think, but then also, from the past self, but, from also the research perspective, I'm a potential, thinking about doing a crowdfunding campaign. You're like, I've spent a lot of time researching them. Let me give you some unsolicited advice, Adam, like what's kind of the Doug Noonan approach? Yeah.
All right, well, thanks. I mean, so a lot of what Amanda and Emma emphasize, things like getting the right platform, getting good visuals, getting the marketing of it right. The research shows that really matters for the success on these crowdfunding platforms. So your Kickstarter page, if you've got good video content on there, you're more likely to reach your goal. Like, it's simple things like that. And there's a lot of research out there about what tips are out there, things that are predictive of success, and it's worth doing some homework on this before you get into it so you can enhance your odds of success. Big picture wise, when I look at the crowdfunding bit and the unsolicited advice I still get really excited about it, more now than I was 5 years ago when I started dipping my toe into it. I think this stuff is here to stay, it's here to grow, and it's worth paying very much attention to and considering. But one thing I've learned is it's not something that I would think of as a vehicle that I would ride exclusively. This is something to couple with other strategies and other approaches. Don't quit your day job and just live in Indiegogo. Keep the day job, use the Indiegogo to help improve your prospects in other fronts. Use this as in combination with something else. And I think that's where it's most effective, where it's not the end goal as the vehicle goes, it's a means to a bigger strategy or means to a different end. I think those kinds of those things are really important, where I think it can be useful to help develop your reputation, to help to build your crowd, and maybe get a couple bucks along the way. This is I think a viable strategy. Rarely does somebody get to go in through Indiegogo and make the whole thing. there aren't a lot of, Veronica Mars style projects that are large in scale and carry something all the way through. It's usually more on the front end, but it's an important first step for many people to get launched and have that proof of concept.
Yeah, I love that piece about the Veronica Mars one. It's like, you never know when lightning's going to strike, and maybe have your ducks in a row, but you never know, if you're going to get that viral quality of it. It looks like we have some Q&As. The audience is tuning in, which is great. So Amanda, I have a question for you from Caleb on if you have any time when over planning went the wrong way. Maybe this is over budgeting or something like that, and this maybe is speaking to the point and kind of theme of like risk taking a little bit, of which Emma was alluding to as well. So just wanted to make space to offer that question.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I can answer it in two ways. I think like within this past year, when we have tried doing, like, for example, our online second sale in replacement for our really popular second sale every August, I think we overestimated the number of bodies that we needed to physically fill the orders, because we weren't sure like the quantity of shipping orders that were going to come through versus curbside orders. And like the worst case that happened in that situation is everyone got to go home early and we got to cut a day off of our fulfillment timeline. So we've sort of been doing it where we're pulling in resources from other departments to temporarily help with those influxes. So we're not like investing in an additional body that we don't need right now, as we've also been operating as lean as possible. And then I'll say, just on like the investment front with, the website, I feel like the biggest fail was, custom building that website when we made the switch to NetSuite. And that was really because it was an afterthought. The marketing team wasn't brought into that decision-making process at the beginning of the conversion process. And so I was able to use that to say like, no, we need to make sure we're investing in the right way to then advocate for the Shopify front. And we have increased our budget in that area beyond what we anticipated when we've seen the results of those investments yield higher returns than we expected.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah.
Great question. Your great answer about risk taking and just trying to make it work when things go wrong, or over planning, and it's just inherent. Scenario planning these days is like the name of the game.
Yeah.
A question I have for everybody to kind of wrap this up, but first I do want to mention that Olga Stella from Design Corps, who's also a CultureSource board member, did mention that anybody looking for design talent to help with any of these digital solutions, please reach out to Design Corps Detroit. As many of you may know, Detroit is the only UNESCO designated city of design. And so we're really lucky to have the organization Design Corps Detroit, a CultureSource member, here, connecting folks to designers like Yen, for example, who is, just crafting up this beautiful visual for us as well. And to kind of wrap up the program before passing it along to my colleague Penny Maria, and then also to Yen to, share a video of what she's been working on. I'm wondering, from all of your perspectives, what is keeping you hopeful in the space of monetizing arts content online? And if, hopeful is maybe, if you're not trying to go with that question, maybe another question is also, what are you really considering and thinking of and questioning as you're approaching this work for, the long-term future, thinking about that in-person, blended online experience future that might happen one day, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's still so many unknowns, but I think myself and my team and, all of Pewabic, we feel really hopeful that despite the hardships of this last year, there was still people there interested in supporting the work that we do and the art that we make. And so I'm just looking forward to kind of building on what we learned in this like crash course of a year that was 2020. And be able to think like even more strategically about how we can sort of build on that in 2021, as we are anticipating still a lot of digital this year, if not mostly digital. And so just really excited to like not have it like sprung on us, but like we know that this is the playing field right now, and being able to like come at it from a little bit less of a stressful place than we did last year. So it's good.
Oh, Amanda, that's kind of music to my ears. The crash course of 2020, I think, is going to be my takeaway phrase from this. And yeah, it definitely was quite a stressful time. I think for me, it's really looking at what's sustainable when we come out of this period. Like this phrase is bandied around quite a lot, but what's the new normal? What is this kind of hybrid world that will exist in the future, and how do we keep theatre going within that? And what I do is exploit theatre productions. We film them and we put them out in other ways. So ultimately, at the heart of it, I and the National Theatre need live theatre to happen, and that needs people to be able to come together, to have a communal experience, to create together and to watch together, and then to be able to take that work out through digital means. So what does that look like? And I think all of those boundaries are blurring, and it's difficult to know exactly what the future is going to be, but also it's, yeah, how we make that sustainable. We've built this platform. It has only ever existed whilst the UK has been in a state of lockdown and quarantine. It has never existed in a normal world. So what does it look like when things get back to normal? And I'm hopeful, keeping fingers crossed and knocking on wood, that it still has success, it still has legs, it still enables us to reach audiences that can't physically come to the National Theatre in London. And I suppose that's what keeps me going, is this has escalated something. This really has thrown us in at the deep end, and now we get to see what happens and hopefully see the project really flourish and grow.
And from my perspective, so full disclosure, I'm an economist, so I'm not prone to optimism or any of this stuff. I'm rather cynical by nature, but looking at for years at crowdfunding in the cultural sector, and I am consistently struck by the, not just level of generosity, but how much the cynical economist's approach to how life should work doesn't really apply. People give and they support, perhaps irrationally, and they do this consistently. And that makes me optimistic in a lot of ways that there's no reason that doesn't continue. And that's good news. I think what from the crowdfunding perspective, again, is there's a huge gap between commercially viable cultural things and things that get funded by grant support and charitable and public dollars. That massive gulf is starting to get these new creative approaches to bridge that gap. And I think that's something that can only get better for the sector. And that gives me pause to be optimistic. And the other last thing I'd mention is that artists in particular are very adaptable. And I think in these kinds of insecure times, we've seen that in play, and there's no reason to expect that we won't see that adaptation and continued growth and learning in how to use and utilize and make the best out of the tools that are there, including going online and monetizing. And I think we've just begun really to adapt to that in the long run. And that means we're only going to be getting better at it. And I'm very optimistic about that piece as well.
Love it. And an optimistic economist, it's rare to have, but we're lucky to have him and Amanda and Emma here as well. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Penny Maria, who is our project specialist at CultureSource. She's going to close out the program and offer a few more links and insights. And Penny Maria, over to you.
Hello, everyone. As Adam mentioned, I'm Penny Maria. I'm the project specialist at CultureSource. We hope this session was beneficial to your organizations as you work to monetize your art. And of course, we applaud our speakers for the gems they've shared with us. Thank you guys for being here. A few important notes. Please be sure to register for our next Digital Access for the Arts program on February 25th. We also encourage you to visit our website for inspirational Black History moments. And of course, as mentioned, Yin is doing fabulous work, so please feel free to learn more about her. We're going to share a link for that. Adam, thank you so much for the amazing producing that you've done to make this session possible for all of our members. And then lastly, a huge thank you to each of the presenters. So Amanda, Emma, and Doug, we are so grateful that you could be here with us today. gonna go ahead and drop in some info for you all as well. And so Adam, any last words?
I'm just going to let you know Yen's time-lapse replay kind of take over the last moment here. So thanks for doing that for us, Yen. I'm looking forward to being able to reflect on it, and we'll be sharing this out via social and the email too, which you'll also receive recording of the program and everything. Just nice to have some visual too, instead of just talking heads. So thanks, Yen. And Yen, the app you use is Procreate, correct? There's a question about that.
Yes, it's Procreate and then just screen mirrored through Zoom.
Wonderful, thanks. And also, since I mentioned that online programs are essentially TV, join us for our hack session, which is starting right now. And you can find more at culturesource.org/calendar. We'll be learning from Detroit Public Television about lighting and audio. So thanks everybody. Thank you, Doug, for being here from Indiana, Amanda from down the road in Southeast Michigan, and Emma, thanks for beaming in all the way from London. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your insights. Look forward to connecting with you all again and seeing y'all in person one day too.
Looking forward to it.
Until then.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all.
Bye.